The Turkish Citizenship by Investment program has become quite popular, but there's quite a few problems with that program that I wanted to go over with you today. And if you get a chance to look at our website, www.citizenshipquickly.com, and you can go in and there's answers and questions and stuff that you can, if you fill out, get to us, we can get back with you and try to help you out. Okay, let's go over the advantages and disadvantages of this program because it has become quite a popular program. Turkey's Citizenship by Investment program at face value looks like a good program. 2019 was a banner year for Turkey, whereby about 2,611 investors and their families got citizenship by investment in Turkey. You pick your own real estate anywhere in Turkey with a real estate option of 250,000 US dollars minimum, or you can invest in a real estate investment trust with a minimum of 500,000 US dollars, or you can actually deposit money in a Turkish bank and in the amount of 500,000 in the Turkish Lira. Now, this is the key thing that I want to go over with you is the Turkish Lira, because so many people don't look at currencies. They don't take this in consideration. You need to learn something about the past on the Turkish Lira. Before the 1960s, after periods of when the lira used to be actually pegged to the British pound and the French franc, which most people don't realize this, a peg of 2.8 Turkish lira equaled 1 US dollar was adopted in 1946, and it maintained that way until 1960 when the currency was devalued to 9 Turkish lira, which would equal 1 US dollar. Now, from 1970, a series of hard then soft pegs to the dollar operated as the value of the Turkish lira began to fall. And again, in 1960, the Turkish lira was tied to the US dollar at 9 Turkish lira to 1 US dollars. Now, and you can pull this up too on Turkish Lira Wikipedia and see these facts that I'm going with you, because before you invest, you really need to start studying these facts before you do this. In 2005, 1 Turkish lira equaled 1,350,000 liras. Not the 1.35 liras that so many people get confused of, because everything after 2005, the 1,350,000 figure got reassigned a figure of 1.35, as if not to show how much this currency had constantly depreciated against the US dollar from 1960. This is where so many people get confused. They don't look at the history of the lira and what's actually happened over this period. The lira constantly went down against the US dollar. And I'm talking about not a little, we're talking about a lot. I did some research on the Turkish lira going back as far as March the 28th, 2005, and found that 1 Turkish lira would buy 1.36 Turkish liras. If you go forward today, and as of the 2nd of March 2020, 1 US dollar would buy 6.12 liras. But that figure of 6.12 is really 6,120,000 liras to the US dollar if you go back to the actual devaluation history of the lira to the US dollar. You can see this Turkish lira history, like I said, in Wikipedia. You can pull it up. There's a chart. It shows you all this stuff. The lira was just repegged to the US dollar in 2005 at 1 US dollar to 1.36 Turkish liras. Now, this is a 78% loss over a 15-year period just on the currency alone against the US dollar. That means for every 100 liras that you had in March the 28th, 2005, those liras as of March the 2nd, 2020, if converted back into US dollars, would be worth about 12 US dollars. This is an incredible loss on your money. You might say, well, you know, the best time to buy is when everything's low and then you sell high. Well, some things don't come back, though, after they drop. And their currencies, I mean, I can tell you horror stories if you look at the Philippine peso or the Dominican Republic peso. These are currencies, if you went back over 40, 50, and 60 years, these currencies used to be pegged 1 Dominican peso or 1 Philippine peso to the dollar. Now both of these have about a 50-to-1 difference against the dollar. That's how much they've dropped against the US dollar over time. And this is why there's so many poor people in the Philippines, because what's happened is their currency's dropped to nothing. You can buy stuff really dirt cheap there. The average wage in the Philippines, to give you an example, in the malls there, I know because I actually went to the malls and I talked to the people there, is like 300 pesos a day. That's like less than $6 a day is what their wages are. I mean, it's incredible how low the pay is there. That's why so many of them go abroad to work, like Dubai, Kuwait, and other places like that. And you need to look at these currencies and examine them before you just blindly go over there, sink your money there, and not know what's going on. Now, let's take a look at, for instance, the Dominican peso. If you take the Dominican peso and the Philippine peso, remember I told you there was a 1-to-1 ratio at the very beginning. Now it's like over 50-to-1 ratio. That's about, that means that over 90%, 98% of your money would have been lost over this period of time if you tried to switch those currencies back into the US dollar. This is the thing you need to be concerned with, because also if you buy real estate, and you're going to be paid in the lira, and if you're paid in the lira, you could the lira could drop as much as what your gain is on the actual rental income, which could mean that you might get paid money on the rental income that's almost nothing when you convert it back into the U.S. dollars, and this is a real problem there. This is why when you go to these countries, everything is so cheap. I mean, it's in dollar terms, you can buy so much with the dollar in these currencies. Another problem you have with getting citizenship in Turkey is trying to get EU membership. And if this happens, the tax system of Turkey, I can tell you, is going to do nothing but get worse. Some EU countries have already considered taxing its citizens based on citizenship like the USA has done, instead of taxing based on residency, because so many wealthy people in countries like France, Germany, the UK, and Spain are losing its citizens. They're going to different countries and they're losing that wealth also. And what a lot of these countries are doing is they're thinking about if these people are going to take their the passports with them and leave and go outside the country, they've actually talked about taxing these people based on citizenship instead of residency. And so many of these people are going to tax havens, like pure tax havens or either territorial tax countries that they can invest either inside or outside the country and escape all taxes. And, this is the thing that these countries like the U.S. and OECD countries and Australia, New Zealand, these high tax countries are getting tired of losing their residents and moving overseas and just using the passport and not really benefiting from these people tax-wise. Also, if you ever choose to move to Turkey and live there more than 183 days a year, you're going to have a high 35% tax that you're going to have to deal with. This is another problem. But I mean, you look at FATCA, which the USA instituted, and the CRS, which was instituted by the OECD countries, and now there's about 100 countries signed on now to the CRS. And FATCA has about every country in the world except for maybe, I think I saw where North Korea and Iran were the only two countries that have not signed any FATCA agreements. Now people have found another way to get around it by moving to these pure tax havens and countries that have a territorial tax system in place, escaping the CRS and the FATCA rules. So the only other way now, sure, they've got ways now to actually find out what you're making, no matter what country you're in. There's very few countries now that are not part of that CRS. Eventually, you're going to have all the countries in the world that are going to be tied to the CRS or the U.S. with FATCA. There's nowhere around it. And what people are doing now is instead of not reporting the money tax-wise, they're just moving to these tax havens. But it's eventually the government's going to do something about this, and the way they're going to do it is they're going to come out with a taxation based on citizenship versus residency. I mean, this is just, I would predict it's no more than 5 to 10 years away. You're going to see the next country like the U.S. that starts taxing based on citizenship. Remember, a good fast-track citizenship program has the following traits I'm going to go over with you, and I wouldn't bypass any of them when making a decision. And Turkey's not in this category, okay? And I'll explain why. But you should be getting a citizenship program that you know that you can get as long as you have no civil or criminal past. A lot of these residency by investment countries do not go by their statutory requirements after the minimum residency requirements have actually been made, therefore messing up your plans for a passport in a reasonable amount of time. Now, you don't have to worry about that with Turkey because it is a citizenship by investment. It's not a residency by investment. But, there are other problems that you're going to have, which I'll go over here. The second thing that I would make sure of, too, is make sure that you have no military service. Most people don't realize this, but Cyprus, the children have a military obligation with that citizenship by investment program. And number three is make sure the tax system that's in place for that country that you're getting citizenship, whether you move there or not, make sure it has a territorial tax system or a pure tax haven, and it doesn't tax on worldwide income. Now, Turkey does do that. Turkey, if you move there and you're there for more than 183 days a year, they're going to tax you heavily on your worldwide income. And number four is make sure if there's a language requirement that you already are fluent in that language before you're actually applying or don't apply. Now, Turkey doesn't have a language requirement to get the passport, but neither does St. Kitts. In fact, every one of these categories that I've just mentioned to you, St. Kitts checks in the block on all of them. That's the big key. It's a tax haven. It's a pure tax haven. They don't tax you inside or outside the country. And St. Kitts has no plans of ever joining the EU. The EU is going to do nothing but make Turkey worse as far as the tax laws go. I don't know if one country that has not joined the EU with their taxes has not become worse. Montenegro is a good example. They've applied for the EU. They have a territorial tax system right now. As soon as they get membership, I guarantee they'll start taxing on worldwide income. If you want to get away from this, go to the countries that aren't part of these tax cartels, like the USA or the EU countries. You need to get away from that type system, and you can get good visa-free countries on some of these. For instance, St. Kitts, you've got visa-free to the Schengen countries. You don't have that with Turkey. Now, when Turkey gets EU membership, sure, you might have it at that point, but you're also going to have higher taxes too, and they'll probably start taxing based on citizenship. This is another issue you have to look at. You also want to pick a country, number five, that allows dual citizenship. Now, St. Kitts and Turkey both allow dual citizenship, but like I mentioned to you, Turkey has so many problems with the currency. You could decimate your investment over a period of years just on the currency alone, and it's constantly falling. If you don't believe me, pull up Wikipedia, look at the track record and what the lira has done. I'm not talking about blimps where, like the euro or the pound sterling, where it's gone out of favor and then it comes back again. Like the euro, went up against the U.S. dollar. The pound sterling went up against the U.S. dollar. Became a lot stronger currency, and then the dollar came back, and then the euro and the pound sterling fell back. We're not talking about currencies that go in and out over a period of maybe 11 years. We're talking about a currency that's never, ever gone up against the U.S. dollar. Look at a chart, a long period chart dating back to 1960s with Wikipedia. And you can see the chart and show how much the lira has actually lost against the U.S. dollar over that time period. That's the key thing that you need to look at. One thing that's nice about St. Kitts, everything is tied to the EC dollar, which is tied to the U.S. dollar, and you don't have these sort of problems with the depreciation like you have with the lira. So these are some real important things that you need to look at. And number six is you want to get a passport that has as many visa-free countries as you can get that has a territorial tax system and or either a pure tax haven. St. Kitts does offer a lot more visa-free countries than Turkey. You're looking at actually a $200,000 for St. Kitts investment in property. You do have some government fees on top of that, but it's $250,000 with Turkey. But with all the other problems. And what happens if your investment diminishes down like it's done in the past, 78% with the currency? Man, you're your investments will get down to nothing almost. So this is something a lot of people invest. They don't consider currency variations when they actually do this investing. So this is real important that you do that. Anyway, if you want to learn more on how to legally get your taxes to zero, how to get a second passport, hit the subscribe button to the right of your screen. You'll get new videos as they come out automatically. And also, number 2 is go to our website, www.citizenshipquickly.com, and fill out a questionnaire so we can help you get started. We deal with about 67 citizenship by investment or residency by investment countries that I think you'd be interested in. And I look forward to talking to you on the next video. Take care.